And we're back. Hopefully you can hear me now. Let us know again if the audio is doing badly out there so we can try to do something else if we need to. But we're going to go through quickly again with Cheryl, and she's going to share again her information about what's happening. So Cheryl, if you'd like to make your presentation.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint presentation that will discuss some of the impact of COVID-19 on mental health. So beginning with our first slide, we've been focusing a lot on our physical symptoms and worried about our temperature, worried about the ventilator shortage and the mask shortage and all the protective equipment because we don't want to get sick. But psychiatrists are fearing that this is a tsunami of mental illness after lockdown. So now as regulations are starting to loosen up as far as being able to go back to somewhat normal living, we are seeing that there's been a huge increase in anxiety and depression as it relates to the whole COVID-19 lockdown. So 1/3 of Americans report anxiety or depressive symptoms since the pandemic and since late April. And normally, just with any pandemic, it does cause stress and sadness and can generate fear. And this is no different. This has been going on for almost 3 months now that we've been living like this. And definitely we are experiencing some stress and anxiety as we move back into normal existence. So I'm just going to talk about some of the different people, some of the situations I've dealt with and talked with professionals within our region. I have interviewed people that have worked with the elderly, veterans, children, and how the COVID-19 has impacted their mental health, people that have come into their clinics. And just overall, when we look at COVID-19 and mental health, definitely it's a sign that along with all of our sickness, death, social distancing, restrictions, separations from family, the deteriorating economy and is causing a severe mental health crisis. We are looking around us and we find out day to day that people are losing their businesses, colleges are closing, local businesses are closing, and it's very scary. People are losing their jobs. They say this is some of the highest unemployment rate, and this is just trickling down to all ages across the lifespan and impacting our mental health. Healthcare providers, this is definitely causing lots of stress. Healthcare providers go to work sometimes 8, 12-hour shifts. They have to wear masks for this entire time. You see pictures of people on Facebook with marks from their masks from having worn them all day long. And it's the stress that, when they come home, they got to get changed and in their garages and showered and bleached, and so they're fearful of contaminating their loved ones. You hear about physicians that come in and nurses that they stay in separate rooms from their families because they don't want to infect them as well. So definitely causing a huge amount of stress. A tragic event that occurred on April 26th was physician Dr. Lorna Breen. She was emergency room physician in New York City, taking care of COVID-19 patients on the front lines. And just the stress of dealing with people dying on a day-to-day basis was too much, and she committed suicide. Very tragic. New York City remains the highest populace for COVID-19 test cases, along with deaths as well. So creating a huge amount of stress among those healthcare providers. In regard to older adults, I interviewed some of the nurse practitioners that care for some of the older adults, and what they are seeing is that these older adults already have pre-existing psychiatric illnesses, that social distancing requirements increases their anxiety and depression, fear, especially related to social isolation and loneliness. We see pictures all the time of elderly people visiting with their loved ones through windows. They're not able to touch their loved ones. There's several facilities in the Green Bay area that have their residents that are living right within their room. They're eating their meals in their room. They're not allowed visitors. They're not allowed to socialize with each other. So this is causing a huge amount of stress. So it's really important that we continue to stay connected with our elderly, whether it's through FaceTime or sending care packages, sending them letters, frequent phone calls, emails, recognizing also early signs and symptoms that may be related to depression. A lot of times we see somatic changes such as headaches, stomach aches, changes in sleep patterns, appetite changes, fatigue, inability to focus on pleasurable activities. These are all early signs and symptoms of anxiety, depression, so that they need to be addressed. I interviewed a friend of mine that works for the Veterans Administration, and she's also a captain in the United States Army and deals directly with patients that live within their homes that suffer from mental illnesses, and they are veterans. And she had mentioned that several of these veterans that had PTSD are really struggling now because they are very paranoid, fearful that the government is involved with the COVID, and we hear lots of fake news about COVID and how none of this is real. People really aren't dying, and so they're very, very fearful. The Department of Veterans Affairs recommends keeping in touch with fellow veterans, taking breaks from reading, watching, and listening to news stories, and sometimes we just continually stay in tune to our media, and it's not always accurate. So trying to stay disconnected, unattached to those things that are continually sending negative messages. COVID-19 and our youth, our youth have probably taken some of the biggest impact as it relates to COVID-19. These kids that were going to be reaching milestones, graduations, proms, different sporting events, all these things have been canceled, so they've had to change their whole lives over to a whole new way of living. Teenagers tend to be very connected to their friends, and now these kids are having to stay home with their parents 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for the past 3 months, which would cause stress for anybody, I think, especially kids. And now kids that may be living in domestic violent situations, school may have been their refuge. So recognizing a child, if maybe they are in a situation that could be potentially dangerous, trying to reach out to them, contacting social services or child protective services if you recognize any sort of symptoms that are causing alarm. Young adults, they are experiencing the highest rates of mental health strain during this pandemic, according to the CDC. And with kids too, not everybody learns the same way, which is a huge thing. You know, some kids, they do not learn real well by the internet. They have to be connected face-to-face with the teacher. And having that loss of structured time may be very difficult for kids that have a difficult time staying focused. So they may have definite changes in their ability to learn in the same way that they were in the classroom. Now as our society begins to go back out of this quarantine and trying to lessen up on our restrictions, you know, we're starting to go back to church now, and we have to face going to church wearing masks and getting temperatures and signing in and staying 6 feet apart, and there's lots of huge changes in how we interact with people, and there's that fear. We don't want to get sick. You know, do we take the risk? And we hear a lot of stuff in the news too as far as the second wave of the pandemic that's supposed to resurface in the fall, and so fearful, you know, am I going to get it? There's lots of rumors or media that's suggesting high numbers of people that are going to get sick and potentially die. So this is definitely causing a lot of fear. Another thing too, people are afraid to get tested. They don't want to come back positive because of the stigma attached to coming back positive, and not having the confidence to do things that you haven't done in a while. So maybe in the past you had been out lifting weights, or maybe you were part of a Y group at the YMCA, or maybe you were part of a tennis group and you hadn't done those things for a long time, and so trying to go back and acclimate yourself to things that you had done in the past, because now you're kind of out of practice. They have been doing a lot of things, a lot of programs have offered Zoom types of exercise classes to help people get back into the groove and stay healthy, but sometimes these can be very intimidating as well. So sometimes with trying to get back into our day-to-day living and activities can cause a sense of fear, which is referred to often as agoraphobia. We're afraid to leave our houses because what if something happens? You know, the fear of going out, and just to all that increased stimuli. And we go to the grocery store now, we're wearing masks, you know, so being so conscientious of staying 6 feet apart from each other. This causes a lot of anxiety and stress. And we need to be gentle and kind to ourselves and stay connected to people through calling them, FaceTiming them, writing them letters, and saying, you know, I need to talk to somebody. I'm going to talk about the resources that are available. One of the biggest affiliations for mental health is Mental Health America, and they offer lots of online surveys to see if you are experiencing anxiety and stress or increased depressive symptoms and what you can do to get help. There's lots of resources that they offer for online counseling. There's lots of groups that are for Alcoholics Anonymous, that they're virtual meetings that people can go to. Taking care of yourself by getting enough sleep. That's a huge thing. You know, trying to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, trying to maintain a healthy diet, trying to stay away from the processed foods. There's lots of memes on Facebook that say that you know, staying home isn't going to be the solution to losing weight, and there's lots of funny things that we see. But you know, trying to have a pattern of healthy eating and exercise and sleep are so important for our mental health. And then lastly, for resources, it's really important to know that there's, right here in Green Bay, Balance Psychiatric Center, Willow Creek Behavioral Health, Brown County Mental Health Services, they all offer free consultations. Resurrection Catholic Church, we have pastoral staff here that are willing to talk to people all the time. You can call our main number and reach out to any of us, and we can refer you also to resources as well. And knowing that you're not alone in this. This is a huge change in our lifestyle, and yes, it is causing stress and anxiety, but you definitely are not alone. So I'm going to introduce to you our pastoral staff here at Resurrection. Father Tom and Sheila DeLuca. And they're going to provide you with some insights regarding spiritual care during the COVID-19, dealing with loss and how God is in all this. So Father Tom is our pastor here at Resurrection Catholic Church. He's also a trained hospital chaplain. And Sheila DeLuca is a pastoral minister at Resurrection Catholic Church as well, and a grief and loss minister.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. That was a wonderful presentation, and you covered so many important issues for us to consider with regard to mental health. And what I think of when I listen to your presentation, and as we talked about this, Father Tom and yourself and I, that we're whole beings. We're not just the mental health, we're not just spiritual, we're not just physical, we are one person. And so what affects one thing affects the other thing, another aspect of our life. And one of the symbols that are kind of that I like to use when I think about issues that come up in our lives, I like to think about a mobile. You know, when you have a mobile, everything is kind of bouncing along. It could be, if I think of myself as the mobile and all of the aspects of my life, everything's going along all right. Oh, maybe I get sick one day.
So Sheila, are you talking about Mobile, Alabama, or?
No, come on, you know, a mobile with the little things all hanging and they all are balancing nice. You get it?
Okay, so little
Not
arms.
a mobile phone, not mobile
Okay,
Alabama.
okay. Gotcha.
Is there another name for those?
No, but I haven't seen a Mobile in a long time.
Well, some people have them hanging outside, with bells,
Chimes kind of thing?
Chimes,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Thank you for that clarification. You're always so helpful. That way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here's that mobile. And sometimes in our grief support groups, we'll talk about that, how everything seems to be okay. Everybody's in place. Everybody, they bump around each other. Winds come, things change. But when somebody dies, that person is off the mobile, and you know what happens then. That mobile gets all cockeyed. And it takes a long time for people to readjust, to find a new spot, to understand their life and relationship.
Trying to come back in balance with
Right,
your
that
life.
homeostasis.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think as we think about our experience with COVID, it has affected all the aspects of our life and the spiritual aspect of our life. That relationship we have with the God within us and around us can sometimes be in jeopardy. And sometimes we know people will say, where is God at this time? Why isn't God here? Father Tom, you wanted to address that, but maybe you don't. I mean, I have a little answer.
Yeah. Well, I've been experiencing that in my own life. As a priest, as a pastor, there's a certain routine that has been going on in my life for 32 years. And, I've been in different parishes, but I get from one church to another, and basically the same expectations are there for me. And when we're part of the team in a parish, we have a daily routine. Things happen that way. And I hear that from many people in their families. The show is talking, when we get unbalanced, we're not quite sure what's going to be coming next. And that stress and that discomfort, some days I get up in the morning and I'm like, is this really going to work? I have no idea when I get up in the morning what's going to happen through the day, and I'm going to go to bed at night going, I had no idea. I did the best I could, and there were moments when I was stressed out and it was difficult doing it, and it was awful in moments. Usually at the end of the day, I felt like at least I survived, and some days I felt like, hey, it worked out well.
I think that speaks to some of what you talked about too, Cheryl, about that sense of routine, the things that we just expect will be part of how things go. We get up, we go to work, we come home, we have dinner, we meet the kids, we take them to sports. We have a pattern. The pandemic changed that, as you clearly explained in people's behaviors.
And even with funerals. I mean, we aren't even able to grieve the same way. Right. For funerals, we have 10 people versus everybody that we know, and so that's definitely changed during this pandemic.
And that's been painful for us to watch families. As you mentioned, the mom or dad, out there working, and they're looking in the window to their children. They haven't hugged their children in maybe even weeks. And we come upon a funeral in a family. It's like, yes, we can have your funeral, but you can only invite 10 people, or you can only invite your immediate family. And you can have a few more, but they have to sit over here, over there, and separate. And it's just not human. It's not who we are.
And the ritual that is so healing when somebody dies and comes through the grieving process, and the ritual of the Mass and the funeral and the visitation, people coming to spend time with you, hugging you, being present, not saying anything, but you're supported and loved. Those things have been left behind. So besides the pain of the loss that is normal and part of all of our lives, it became intensified by being isolated, not having the comforts of people with you, and even for the person who was ill and perhaps and who died, they often did not have people with them in the hospital to be with them in that dying moment, in those last days, and then everybody dealing with that pain, that loss. Those are tremendously painful and powerful
Absolutely,
moments.
absolutely. And have been speaking with a number of families, parents especially, who, and I can see it in their eyes, that it's painful for them to say this, but there's also relief at the same time saying, if my child could only go to school, if my child could only go out and play with their friends or do something, to have the family that close, as you mentioned, for that, for basically 24/7, for that many days, it can be excruciating, painful, and challenging for a family, a parent who has been doing a great job in raising their children, and all of a sudden confront this isolation that brings out, in a sense, the worst, and on the other side, the best of their relationship.
Right.
Right.
So we're faced with, that notion of crisis. The Chinese character for the word crisis is a danger and opportunity. They take those two characters, put them together to be the word crisis. So it's
I always chuckle with that too, because it can be a dangerous opportunity.
It's dangerous
Right.
and an opportunity. So we can grow with it. We can, and that's been a beautiful thing that we've seen as well. So that through all of this, there have been some tremendous connections people have made with their family. People have talked about.
And I can say just with my kids every day, literally walking for miles and miles, and the conversations that come up that we didn't usually have before, because they would retreat to their rooms and go on the internet or talk to their friends or be in sports, and now we're having lots of conversations, and you really get to know your kids and they get to know you too. And then there's the other side of it too, the stress, especially if a parent has lost a job, and the fear of where's the money going to come from? And you hear families talking to each other and being worried, and now these kids are brought into this too, and they're concerned and they're worried, and things that kids really shouldn't have to be worried about.
Right.
A good thing with all of that, though, is healthy communication, because sometimes we keep secrets. We think we're protecting each other. People keep secrets about mental health. I mean, how beautiful that we're able to talk about mental health as part of who we are, and we're on a continuum of mental health, and so it's good to address these issues, that it's not something to be shameful of, to be embarrassed about, but something to recognize and to grow from. And so being able to acknowledge some of those with your family, with one another, to be straightforward about the pain, the difficulties, the changes that you're going to have to make. I think we were talking about the incidents going on right now. Besides the pandemic, we've moved into also a very real, painful situation with racial discrimination. And how are we? That's hitting us in the face.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, again, and watching, and everybody reacts to the looting and the destruction. That really is very much a sideline of what's central to what these protesters are out there doing, and where we all need to protest in our own hearts and souls, and as best we can, because there are injustices, and there's a lot of loss that happens on a regular basis with people of color and people in situations where they've been oppressed for many generations, and how do we understand that in a way that it's not easily fixed? There's not just we're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be all over. I hear that with the people saying with the COVID virus as well. It's going to be over soon, and we're going to go back to normal again soon. It's like, well, yeah, no, this is ongoing. So again, some of the stresses are there because it is ongoing. It's not like, boom, I'm going to get a job again tomorrow and life's going to go on normal. It's a lot of things need to come together. And as I look at the protests and the George Floyd situation, there's a strong sense of we're all in this together. And I think that's one of the major voices that I hear out there. Yes, the arrests have been made of the 4 officers, and that is one sense of justice. But many are speaking of the ongoing sense of how do we realize that this injustice is a loss for all of us. And we're all, in a sense, victims of that. And we're all giving up something of our own wholeness and well-being by holding on to structures in the past and present that really don't serve anybody. And that's something that I think we're all grappling with. This is not the first time we've seen protests over situations like this happening, and it probably won't be the last. But again, that's another source of stress. It's another source of anxiety that we're trying to put together now at this time of the COVID virus and the racial distress and situations happening out there.
And I think the protest gives us a vision of healthy dealing with wrongs. Protesting, peaceful protesting, is a right and a good way to make things change. Sometimes we have to have healthy protesting in our hearts, to protest the things that we grew up with that shamed us, the things that we were taught that were wrong. They did the best they can. Our parents did the best they could, but they weren't always right, and we have to forgive them and move on.
They didn't come with a book of instructions either.
The instructional manual just wasn't there.
It never came with one,
Right.
did it?
And it's generations, not just my parents, but their parents and their
Yes,
parents.
absolutely.
And, this goes back centuries.
Centuries,
Yeah.
centuries.
Right.
Yeah.
As we were talking, I was thinking that I can have a whole new appreciation of the Israelites leaving Egypt, and they knew that lifestyle. That was their routine. They knew how to be slaves. They knew how to take care of and to speak to the Egyptians. They knew how to work hard. They knew how to make sure that whatever they did, they were going to get their meal of the day. They had a place to live, and it was fine. It was okay. And then the voice comes up, and Moses calls them forth, and they go off into the desert. And we look back and go, well, why didn't they trust in God? Why did they go and form the golden calf? Why didn't they complain to Moses? And we have no water. Why'd you bring us out here in the middle of nowhere? I mean, it's that same kind of loss, same kind of grief. But the good news is they held on for 40 years. And you can imagine, we're talking about 3 months, 40 years of going through the desert, and their life changed again. So their new normal was traveling, was moving, was depending upon God's strength and God's presence there with them, until they met up with the promised land. And I think that's our goal.
Yes, and I think when you say, and God was present with them.
Mm-hmm.
God wasn't distant. Our God is not a far-off God. Our God came to us in Jesus Christ, and God is present with us in the church.
We just celebrated Pentecost with the Holy Spirit.
Yes, and God is with us
Right.
in the darkest times. God is with us in the joyful times. God is, there's a little phrase people sometimes put on their prayer cards for their loved ones, and it says, our loved one is only as far away as God, and God is very, very near. And I think that message of God's presence with us, God wants us to be healthy, wants us to be happy. God's
Exactly.
salvation.
We started out with the image of we are a holistic people. We're not separate parts. We don't do our physical here and our spiritual there and our relationships over here. It all comes together. And that's the God we're talking about. God is love. God is that wholeness, that integrity, the sense of being all in all within ourselves and in the world. And that's the desire, whether we're dealing with the COVID virus or we're dealing with protesting injustices and racial discrimination in our world. It's all seeking wholeness. It's all seeking that sense of the promised land that maybe someday, and even here now today, we can be and do things that bring us together as one, as people of God.
I don't know where we are in our time-wise here, but are we? I was going to
We're
say
pretty close.
We're pretty close because Cheryl gave us some very good suggestions of how to take care of ourselves, to take care of our mental health, And maybe with our spiritual health, we can offer a few suggestions as well in terms of, what feeds your soul? What feeds your inner life so that you can be strong in your faith? Do you read scripture? Read the lives of the saints who can give you really encouragement so you can admire. Do you pray?
I love going on walks with my puppy Ruby, and she makes me chuckle, but it's also a quieter time when I can pray and I can take moments to just kind of feel that oneness around me.
And being part of nature then too.
Being part of nature as well.
That we're so fed and nurtured by the beauties of our creation.
Right.
I think we can think about reaching out. Sometimes I hear this often with people who come for grief support groups. They'll say, I'm sad, but other people have it worse. And there's something beautiful about being able to step into somebody else's shoes and think about them as well. And so, we've seen that kind of giving and giving and giving from parishioners here, but throughout the community and the country, that people have tried to do something good for others as well as, and that feeds your soul. It comes back to you. You get. Yeah,
a beautiful response to people offering food, offering help, services, financially, just to help others feeds the soul.
Yeah, and our tradition has the, corporal and physical works of mercy, spiritual works of mercy, that just encourages that.
Just the last thing I have would be that prayer is conversation, it's relationship. And you had mentioned, Cheryl, frequently in talking that it's important to build relationships and take this opportunity of danger to come together with family and take those walks together at times. Take a time to ask, how are you? Where are you right now? Start conversations with your children, with your spouse, just to be able to communicate and see that as a form of prayer and building of that relationship. So we're going to be having a little experience. Cheryl's going to introduce our next segment, which is a beautiful way to take some of that challenges and difficulties and bring it into wholeness, into the balance of life, that mobile may float nicely on our journey.
So I'd like to introduce our breathing and stretch presenters. Jackie Joseph is a Resurrection member since 1996. She's also the co-chair of the Health and Wellness Committee. She's a middle school math teacher in De Pere and a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. And her co-presenter is Jean Needles, Resurrection member as well, and co-chair of the Health and Wellness Committee for the past 2 years. She's retired from business industry and former licensed practical nurse. And they're going to demonstrate for you some breathing and stretch exercises just to help calming yourself, decreasing anxiety, and just bringing your thoughts and mind to more of a positive perspective.
So this is, people at home, you're able to participate with at this time. So
enjoy.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jackie Joseph, and on behalf of the Health and Wellness Committee, I, along with my co-chair, Joseph, and on behalf, we welcome you of the Health and Wellness Committee. I, along with my co-chair, Jean Needles, we welcome you to our session tonight where we are going to be working on trying to just calm the mind, calm the body, and give some nice relaxing stretches just to de-stress during this time. In addition, I will be sharing some of an examen prayer that has been shared with us to give you some insight into some thoughts that we may be able to bring into our minds. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and just find a seated position where you can crisscross the legs. Let the hands rest on the lap in any comfortable position. Notice the spine, that you are sitting nice and tall. Your shoulders are relaxed. You're not rounding out that spine. Jean will be giving you a side view. I'll be giving you a front view. She'll be holding the poses the entire time, while I'll be taking some time to be reading through some parts of our prayer. So while you're here, if it feels comfortable to close your eyes, that can help limit distractions. And just focus on breathing in and out. As you breathe in, really focus on filling the lungs up entirely. And with your exhale, completely deflate the lungs. The first part of our examine prayer says to acknowledge how you are feeling in this moment. If being calm is hard for you, acknowledge it. If you find yourself frustrated or feeling stress, acknowledge it. God wants to be present in all parts of our lives, not just the easy or serene moments. Again, continuing to breathe in and out, either through the nose or through the mouth, whatever is most comfortable for you. Focusing on calming the mind. Spine nice and tall. And one more inhale. And exhale the breath completely. And from here, we're going to go ahead and uncross the legs and then recross with the opposite foot closest to the body. You may notice that it might not feel as comfortable as the first position, but we're going to go ahead and just reconnect with that breath, breathing in and out through the nose, through the mouth, whatever is most comfortable at this time. While we're connecting with the breath, ask for light and insight as you prepare to review your day. For some, that light may come in the form of a sense of the divine. For others, it's from a deep sense of your true self. Together, we will work on breathing in, filling the lungs, nice deep inhale, fill up, hold the breath at the top of your inhale, and exhale slowly, controlling that breath out. Hold the breath at the bottom of your exhale. And again, inhale, filling up. Hold the breath at the top. And exhale, completely deflating the lungs. And then hold the breath at the bottom of that exhale. And go ahead, resume your normal breathing in and out, whatever pace is comfortable. And from here, we're going to make our way into a tabletop position where we're on all fours. So go ahead and swing those feet behind you. Hands are stacked directly under the shoulder. Knees are under the hips. And from here, with your inhale, we're going to let the belly drop as we lift the head, lift the tailbone. And with your exhale, tucking the chin, tucking that tailbone under, rounding up that back. And go ahead, with every inhale, you drop the belly, going at your pace. And every exhale, remember to round up that spine, just loosen up the back. Do a couple more here with your breath. And finishing the one you are on, we'll go ahead and make our way to our backs. We're going to lie down, feet flat on the mat so your knees are bent. And from here, with your feet out about as wide as your hips or a little wider, go ahead and drop those knees together. And while you're lying back and relaxed, place one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. And notice with every breath in and out. How your belly will rise and fall with that rhythm. And again, closing the eyes, trying to limit distractions, focusing on the breath. And continuing with our prayer, take a moment to think about how COVID-19 has impacted your life. Even as we are being asked to distance ourselves from one another socially, ask yourself what connections you find yourself grateful for. Who makes you feel grounded and connected to God? Taking a moment to think of this as you breathe in and out. Taking one last breath in. Exhale that breath out. Notice which hand is on your heart and which hand you have on your belly. And from here, we're going to go ahead and hug those knees into the chest, wrapping the arms around that lower leg, gently moving side to side, massaging that back. If it feels good, you can go ahead and reach that forehead up towards the knees. And placing the head back down, we're going to go ahead and let those feet come down to the mat. Soles of your feet together, knees open out wide in a reclined butterfly. And noticing which hand you had on your heart, which hand you had on your belly. Go ahead and switch positions. And if you forgot, it's okay. Just stay where you're comfortable. Breathing in and breathing out in a nice controlled tempo. Again, closing the eyes if it feels good. Notice the rise and fall of your belly. Continuing to relax, making sure your jaw is not clenched, your tongue is away from the roof of your mouth. And continuing with our prayer, public health issues have a way of making us recognize how interwoven our lives are with others in society. What connections to others are you becoming more aware of? Who do you normally choose to reach out to and connect with? Who do you maybe avoid or refuse to see? If you can, try to picture the faces of these people. What connections have you taken for granted? What connections impact you the most? And continuing that breath in and out, knees out wide, opening up the hips. Taking one last breath in and exhale it out. Reach your arms up overhead. Let those feet extend out long, big full body stretch. And with your exhale, go ahead and hug the knees back into the chest, rounding out that spine. Again, not pushing to the point of pain. As you think of the ways in which we are connected or disconnected from one another, pick a connection or a lack thereof that seems important, significant, or is manifesting itself the strongest. Pause and reflect on where you're being invited to grow from that moment. If you are a person of faith, take a moment to pray with it. And we are going to make our way to our side into a comfortable fetal position where you can rest your head on that arm or a pillow if you have it nearby. Tuck those knees up near your chest Your front arm can be wherever you are most comfortable. Gently closing the eyes, taking these last few moments to continue to relax with every breath in and out. God gifted us with limitless creativity and imagination. Even in this time of separation and possible isolation, what is one way you can maintain meaningful connection to others, whether directly or indirectly through technology or through intentional focus and attention? Feel the weight of your body on your side, relaxing for the final couple moments. And from here, gently opening the eyes, go ahead and use that front arm to push yourself up, back to a seated position where we started. Finding some space that's comfortable for you. We will go ahead and inhale, sweeping the arms up overhead, bringing those palms together, bringing them to your heart, and we will close with a final prayer. We pray for health and healing for you. May God heal any sickness you may have, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual. May He give you good health, good energy, and joy today and always. In Jesus' name we pray. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Was that bird planned in the background? That was nice. That was nice. So, Sheila, I was waiting for you to get down on the ground and do some nice breathing. I did a little bit, and my back isn't like it used to be. One of the things that I noticed that I took from the beautiful prayer is the sense that we can always breathe. We can always take those moments to calm ourselves, breathing in, breathing out, and allowing that to happen. So let's just take a moment to reflect on that and just be grateful for this opportunity we've had together. Some of you have chatted in that it's been a good discussion, a good time to just step back a little bit from life and recognize what's happening. I want to thank all of you for being here with us this evening. Cheryl especially for organizing this and bringing this together for us this evening. Sheila for your opportunity to bring your wisdom into who we are, as well as Jackie and Jean in those breathing exercises. And again, we can relax, we can come back into that wholeness and know God's gift of grace and presence. So I just want to say, offer you a little prayer, a poem actually, and again, it's a poem called When This Is Over. Just again, our lives are changing, but this is not it. Life will continue to move forward, it will change, but it will move forward, and we'll find a new normal again. So when this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be, we were called to be, we hope to be, and may we stay that way, better for each other because of the worst. Again, a poem by Laura Kelly Vanucci. We ask, Lord, to bless and strengthen us, reach out for help, build our relationships, and bring us into the oneness of your gift of grace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace and know God goes with you in all ways.